Greetings and welcome to another special episode of Morrowind Modding Showcases looking at the mods of Morrowind Modding Madness. As always, I'm your host Guy, and today we're taking a look at the 4 items mods that were released by our 4 modding teams for the second week modding challenge of Morrowind Modding Madness. Each team had to build and release an items mod of some kind in just a single week. And let me just say, there's some really cool mods here, from tons of new weapons to scripted special effects and wobblejacks galore. And before we get started, you'll find download links for all the mods shown down in the video description below, along with a link to our online poll where you can vote for your favourite items mod from Morrowind Modding Madness. Now, to kick things off, we're starting off with our first items mod, Malham Weapon Companion mod by Team Flying Guars, aka TheDrunkenMudcrab and MementoMoritius. This mod adds a new sword to the tower at Tel Fry. Only, this is no ordinary sword. This sword is infused with the soul of the great Archmage of the Arcane University, Malham, and he won't just let, anyone pick him up. You have to have a high enough willpower in order to subdue the sword into becoming one of your possessions. And real quick, you can see the Malham stats here, and it's a pretty powerful long blade with some pretty good enchantments on it. In any event, you can see the blade here, and it really is a very striking looking sword, really quite nice looking, with that Daedric sort of style about it, with the black and darkish steel and the red line down the center, and let's not forget the rather fantastic looking handle. This kind of feels like the sort of sword you could have found in vanilla Morrowind even, in terms of aesthetic style. It fits right in next to those other Daedric weapons out there. But that's not the main highlight of this mod. In fact, the highlight here is that you can talk to your newly found sword by casting a spell you get when you first pick it up. The idea here is that the sword is basically like a companion, with a number of unique greetings, dialogue topics, and more that you can read through, and the sword does have some pretty strong opinions on a variety of topics should you decide to peruse the dialogue options here. And of course, like any decently powerful blade, Malham is pretty useful in a fight, perfect for mid-level and even higher level characters looking for something to, beat off a giant skeleton army or something. And anyway, it should also be noted that Malham has his own personal history and stories, but in order to get him to tell you about all that, you'll need to feed him empty grand soul gems. And over time, he'll tell you about his life before becoming a sword. Now, real quick, I did just want to sort of zoom in on the blade model here, because it is a really impressive looking model. There's a lot of intricate detail on the handle and the blade itself. It's just, really quite beautiful looking in that sort of, murderous weapon way. But moving on, we're next going to take a look at an issue of Thrust by Team Cutie Kagouti, aka R0, Digmen, and Povuholo. And this mod adds rapiers to the game, and you can find them in a variety of locations. They've been added to shop vendors, though mainly just common Imperial traitors, since rapiers are an sort of Aldmiri style blade not typically found in Morrowind. Though they can also be found in various hand-placed locations all over Vardenfell, like in a set of caverns or even the occasional Daedric dungeon, and you can also find them in leveled lists with smugglers' crates and barrels, where they will occasionally pop up among other loot containers. And anyway, I wanted to take a closer look at these new weapons, starting with the iron variety. In total, there's about 6 new kinds of rapiers that you can find in Morrowind, including iron, steel, and as you can see here, silver. A lot of these blades have some really cool and intricate handles especially. As you can see here with the silver handle, it sort of has a pair of silver serpents rising up around the base of the blade, which is, very cool looking. And here we have the glass rapier, perhaps my favourite out of all the new rapiers added into the game. It has a really fantastic looking handle here. I mean, it's basically a sort of silver mask with glass spikes coming out of it, which is certainly, a very unique and very cool looking design choice. It'll certainly make your enemies think twice before testing your blade in battle. And here's another one with a more traditional but still, kind of ornate handle. And as you can see here, these blades don't really have much in the way of a slashing design, since they're meant to be thrust into the enemy's torso, instead of, slashing or chopping them. Lastly, here's the Daedric rapier. And this is another really awesome looking blade. I love the design here, and all these rapiers, I think, do fit in rather well with the rest of Morrowind's assortment of weapons. They have a very, sort of vanilla and lore-friendly appeal to them, and they're definitely fun to, come across for those, weapons fanatics always looking to expand their armories. I did want to show off the stats here real quick. As you can see, they do a lot of thrust damage in particular, but, little to no slash or chop damage. So you have to be careful of how you wield them in combat in order to get the most out of these. And here you can see all the new blades together. It should be noted that rapiers come in both unenchanted and enchanted varieties. So dire flame rapiers, cruel frost rapiers, and so on and so forth, can also be found around Vardenfell, which helps to, blend them in even more with the rest of the game. And if you're careful, you may even find some unique artifact rapiers in some of Morrowind's ancient dungeons, so do keep an eye out. Next up, we have Suvanto's Wondrous shop of curious creations by Team Green Cow, aka AutoClock, EnclaveKiller, and SV Engineer 99. Deep inside one of the mini Dwemer ruins on Red Mountain, you'll find a small items shop secreted away in the corner, run by a Kagouti proprietor who has an assortment of curious items and artifacts for sale. Some of these are really, quite strange, as only the dark imagination of AutoClock could create. From massive Daedric helms, giant hammers, strange spears of light, and a shield generator of some sort. There's also a few statues of a skeleton beast killing a mud crab in here, apparently meant to represent Rattleteeth Manor slaying their opponents in the first round of the competition. There does seem to be a bit of a rivalry forming between Team Green Cow and Team Cutie Kagouti, and who knows, perhaps they'll get their revenge this round for their defeat last time. But regardless of all that, assuming you're of a high enough level or a famous enough hero, you can purchase these artifacts and strange knickknacks from the Kagouti here. And a word of warning, all these items have some really interesting and curious effects to them that, of course, require the latest updates of MWSE, MCP, and MGEXE. And to start things off, let's take a look at one of the more crazy items included, a massive Daedric helm. And this doesn't actually do anything special, I don't think. It really just, mostly looks terrifying or comical depending on how you look at it. Either way, it's certainly an interesting sight to see. And next up we have one of my personal favourite new weapon toys, the Spark Stick. This is a really fun weapon, and I have to say that I had a really great time messing around with it. Basically, when you hit someone with the stick, they shrink in size, and as they become smaller, they also become weaker, with their strength, endurance, and other stats dropping in points. It's a lot like, Morano Reducto's Shrink Wand by Superstar, only now it actually has some handy combat effects. Having trouble with a particularly difficult opponent? Just shrink them down to size. And I'm not entirely sure what the limit is on how small you can shrink people, but you'll notice it has an area effect, so it'll shrink not only just that person or creature you're attacking, but also anyone nearby as well, and eventually leaving a pile of tiny corpses in the wake of your encounters that'll be sure to puzzle onlookers. And just for the heck of it, here it is being used again because I really, can't overstate how much fun this is. It's just really amusing watching your enemies shrink before you. But anyway, moving on to another weapon, we have the Rail Hammer. And while this one doesn't have quite as cool of an effect, it is extremely handy nonetheless. Basically, you can use the Rail Hammer to bash open locks on doors, chests, or any other, locked container or item. Depending on your strength and blunt weapon skills, you may be successful in bashing open the locks, or just, end up fruitlessly hitting a door over and over. Either way, the prisoners in Fort Plesiad will certainly be thankful to you for, busting them out. And real quick, I want to show off the Rail Hammer being held by my character here, because it's a really massive and also really cool looking weapon. There's even a few moving parts in it with, animated gears or some such in the design. And my character is also wearing a cool little crown helm that's also included in this mod package. And next up we have a staff weapon, and this one is also pretty cool. Basically, depending on your spear and agility skills, there's a random chance that you can disarm your opponents of their weapons, armor, clothing, basically anything they have really. Say someone is beating you with a sword and you just really want them to stop, hit them with this staff and disarm them of their weapons. This of course won't transfer the items to you though. This will just, drop them off on the ground, leaving a trail of armor, weapons, and clothing as your fight progresses across the town square. Though depending on your level of fatigue, this may actually end up being a bad thing though, since these guards can now gang up on you and well you to death with their bare fists. And real quick, you can see what I mean by all the various dropped items strewn about. The more you hit people with your staff, the more you'll disarm them of everything they own, and the more clutter will be left behind in your wake. And finally, you can see a small selection of the items included in this mod, though there's obviously a lot missing here, but included on this table is the Daedric shield generator, which I believe is mostly cosmetic. Obviously the Rail Hammer, the Crown Helm, Swat Stick, Staff, and there's also the Bookworm Blade, which we didn't really showcase here, but SV Engineer 99 has test demos of all the weapons included in this mod over on his YouTube channel, so I'd recommend checking that out for, more video footage of what all these weapons can do. Now, last of all, we have the Wabberjack by Team Wretched Netch, aka Greatness 7, MatthewTheBagel, and VvardenfellTribez. And this mod actually starts out with a quest after you've talked to some of the locals in Dagenfell, and hear rumors of a new half-sunken Daedric shrine north of the city. And this will take you to a new small island covered in ancient Daedric ruins that seems to have appeared seemingly out of nowhere. The ruins, at least on the surface, are fairly small, a single Daedric tower jutting upwards out into the sky with a small docks nearby, and an overgrown garden of mushrooms, roots, and other plant life. This certainly stands out as a rather unique looking location among Morrowind's numerous Daedric ruins, with a bit of a, sort of makeshift feel about them, especially with that small hut there on the top of the main tower. And now there's a ton of NPCs and creatures that will talk to you around the island, though they don't exactly say a whole lot. They mostly talk about the ritual, which is apparently happening deep within this Daedric shrine. This Daedric ruin, as it turns out, is actually a pretty big dungeon that delves deep into the darkness below, but none of the Daedra, at least at first, are hostile. You can walk right past most of them, or even, talk to them. Though, again, apparently most of this dialogue is about this mysterious ritual that's taking place and how you're apparently just sort of running late for it or some such. You'll even encounter a few seemingly normal people down here who will try and, warn you away from proceeding, that like that's going to happen. You're a foolhardy adventurer after all. It's your destiny and your birthright to explore every nook and cranny, no matter how many warnings you get along the way. And eventually you'll come out into a massive cavern chamber with a towering Daedric edifice in its center, and far from being just a small grouping of ruins, this is really more of a fairly sizable underground Daedric city, with lots of NPCs milling about and different buildings here and there that serve as, living areas for the residents here. And whatever strange ritual is going on, however, is taking place at the top of the central tower, and you'll need to find your way up there to take part in whatever is to come. And I'm going to deliberately cut out most of the video footage here so as to, avoid spoilers. But this is one really awesome looking dungeon and underground city that I really highly encourage everyone to check out. And after the ritual is complete, which again we're not going to be showing here so as not to spoil anything, you'll find yourself the owner of the Wabberjack, which you can see in my inventory here. And here again, you can see my character holding it, and it's a very cool looking staff, as only the Wabberjack could be, with the faces of Sheogorath, lining the top here, mouth gaping open, ready to unleash madness upon the world, and, most especially your foes. Each and every time you use the Wabberjack, it randomizes the enchantments on the Wabberjack, so it may have shock damage one moment, dispel the next, damage health later on, or paralysis, or any of a dozen other different, spell effects, and you'll never know what you're going to get with each hit. Not only that though, of course, but each time you hit some creature or NPC with a Wabberjack, there's a random chance that they'll be turned into a random creature, like a Daedroth or a Netch or a rat or an Ogrim, really anything you can think of. And for those of you who know all the history behind the Wabberjack, where doors can become boars, know that this is exactly what the Wabberjack is supposed to do. Really, it's one of the artifacts that was most notably missing from Morrowind when the game first released, since the Wabberjack was in both Daggerfall and later on Oblivion. And I have no idea whether or not it was in Skyrim, since to be honest, I never actually played that far into it to find out. But point is, it was a notable missing artifact in Morrowind's catalogue of artifacts. A particular shame given the, cool effects that it has. But now with the Wabberjack, you can play around with it in Morrowind too, turning people into Quama miners, or getting tons of new weird enchantments on each hit. And I do want to just really quick get a closer look at the Wabberjack Mortal, since this is a really beautifully designed artifact. So using a special real-time item grabber that Greatness 7 designed, let's take a closer look at the staff here, and there's just some really cool carvings going on with this mortal here. It looks incredibly beautiful and very unique. And anyway, that wraps up this special episode of Morrowind Modding Showcases. Don't forget to vote for your favorite items mod by December 23rd using our online poll down in the video description below, and I'll see you all next time with our next batch of mods.